We lost the children!
This may be my last message to the world. My brother and I have been kidnapped.
Keep a cool head. This is all some crazy mistake.
This is the most incredible adventure of my entire life.
Family fun with Disney's Sunday Drive, Saturday at 5 on Channel 5.
We live in a world of pain. It surrounds us, taking many forms.
Some types of pain warn us and prevent us from further harm,
Affecting us all in different ways.
The worst aspect of pain is in fact the fear of what it's doing.
Look beneath the surface to understand why we hurt. Channel 5 investigates a world of pain. Sunday at 8 on 5.
You're watching 5 with a true crime double bill with scenes of crime and arrest and trial starting in half an hour. That's after Charlie Stayt with a roundup of Thursday's 5 News.
Tonight on 5 News, tears and fears as Belfast children are once again caught up in the violence. It's 7:30, I'm Charlie Stayt. We're live in Belfast where there's been yet more violence around schools of both religions. Also in the programme, sun, sand and hidden sicknesses. Britain's new battle against exotic bugs. Plus, Cecil Parkinson's love child finally free to tell her story after 18 years. And football's week of misery. Now the FA tackle missile throwing at Stamford Bridge. Parts of Belfast are tonight on a knife edge once again after a fresh outbreak of sectarian violence. Once again, it's children, both Catholic and Protestant, caught in the middle. Today, men armed with iron bars smashed up cars outside one Catholic school as hysterical children looked on helplessly. Nearby boys from a Protestant school had to be taken home in armoured police cars for their own protection. All this despite the fact that Holy Cross Catholic Girls' School, where the problems began, had remained shut. Well, 5's James Bays is in Belfast before us now. James, it had been hoped that keeping Holy Cross closed today would avoid any violence. It hasn't worked like that, has it?
No, it's been very tense. I've spent quite a bit of the day in North Belfast. It's been very tense despite that school remaining closed. In fact, we hear this evening of some car hijackings taking place in that area. There are crowds on the street. Some stones have been thrown, and this is just hours after the clean-up operation from last night, removing those cars that were burnt out last night in some of the worst rioting in North Belfast for months. The area around the Holy Cross School was last night the scene of some of the worst rioting for months. After clashes between nationalists and loyalists, both sides turned their anger on the police and the army. They were pelted with petrol bombs, acid bombs, rocks and bricks. A number of vehicles were set alight. The security forces chased the rioters into back streets, but they then regrouped and attacked again. Today there's been another worrying development at another girls' Catholic school. This morning a group of men, some of them armed, went in through these gates and smashed the windows of cars parked inside. A local Protestant minister told me it's a very grave development.
Schools, children, teachers are amongst the most basic building blocks of society, and for them to become targets within society is very, very sad and very serious. I would be really quite distressed about that.
James, unfortunately, I understand the signs are it's going to be much more of the same tonight.
That's right, Charlie. Already this evening at a Protestant boys' school, the boys had to be escorted out in police vans because an angry mob had surrounded their school. As I say, there's been some car hijacking tonight. It's not looking very good. When I was travelling back from North Belfast earlier on this evening, myself and my camera operator were in the car and a firework was thrown at us.
James, a lot of people will be mystified that in large parts of Northern Ireland, Protestants and Catholics live happily side by side. Why is this area so much of a problem?
It's very, very hard to explain why this part of North Belfast is so bitterly divided. People here live very, very closely together, but that doesn't really explain it. A lot of people have a lot of hatred. That doesn't totally explain it. Perhaps one little bit of research that was produced recently helps, and it shows that some 70% of those people who live in that area have never had a meaningful conversation with someone from the other community.
James, thanks very much. Well, scenes of violence like those that we just saw have marred the streets of Northern Ireland for decades, with political divisions seemingly irreconcilable. But since the trouble began at the Holy Cross Primary School, what's most appalled those who've seen the pictures is that it's young children caught literally in the middle of the sectarian hatred. Earlier today, James went to visit one little girl and her mother. This is their story.
It's difficult when you hear the helicopter every night and on the news you hear the battles start throwing their petrol bombs, and well, it was frightening, but when I got into school yesterday morning it wasn't frightening at all. But when my mummy told me that we had to go the back way, I was wondering what happened, and then I heard people talking that was somebody got hit.
I'm completely and utterly horrified to have this kind of violence anywhere, especially near primary school. It's heartbreaking. It's just really literally breaking our hearts. I think you always have to have hope. At the minute it's looking very bleak, but I think there always has to be that shred of hope. I mean, we've had a few weeks with no protest. The children have been happier. Our home lives have gotten back to normal. We've been much more relaxed. It's been wonderful, you know, and we held out hope for 12 long weeks, and eventually we got it. It's shattering at the minute. We are all shattered, and we're really, really depressed about it, but I do still, there has to be some hope somewhere, otherwise you'd be as well just lying down and giving up. A lot of the children have been very depressed about it. The adults, we're falling apart, basically. I mean, I cried. We all cried yesterday when we seen what happened. We're just trying to comfort each other and try to draw strength from each other and just try to be there to support one another, you know, and try to be there obviously to support the children as well. I love the school. Shannon loves the school. It's a wonderful school. They teach brilliant values in it. They teach forgiveness and obedience and loving and sharing. I wouldn't like her to come out of the school. You know, I want her to still go to the school. I went to the school myself, and I know what it's worth. You're asking yourself the same question, you know, if they close Holy Cross and I put her to the convent, are then they going to attack the convent school? It's just behind them, you know, so it's a chance that you're taking. What's the alternative? What do you do? Where do you send your child to school, you know? It's an agonising decision for any parent to have to make. I mean, this is a symptom of the age that we live in, and it's completely heartbreaking. It's a terrible situation to be in.
Lisa and Shannon Irvine telling how the troubles at the Holy Cross Primary School have affected them. The crisis in Britain's rail network has once again dominated the political agenda, with a government minister admitting the trains here are the worst in Europe. That forced other ministers into a huge PR push to admit some failures, but insist things will get better. The figures on cancellations and delays, though, paint a very different picture. Five's political editor Andy Bell reports.
Trains have become the start-of-year headache for the government. Beyond the general malaise of the network, there are strikes with more planned, and now new figures showing delays and cancellations getting worse. For the man supposed to sort it out, Stephen Byers, there was also a nasty shock today from a government colleague. Peter Hain, Europe Minister, said in an interview that Britain's railways were the worst in Europe and that the government had been too slow in getting to grips with the problem. Just what Stephen Byers didn't need.
Peter's right to say that in the first 2 years of the last government we had a very strong control on public spending, but that's to get public finances under control, to get low interest rates, to get low mortgages, to ensure that we've got the money that we can now invest in our railways and other aspects of transport.
Thanks to official figures just published, we now know the total time clocked up in delays by each individual train operating company. And with a little calculation, that can be divided by the total number of people using those services over the last year, and that will give you the time lost by each individual passenger over the last 12 months, thanks to delays. Multiply that by 365 to give you the number of days. So after doing the sums, what might this regular commuter expect as his total delay? David Brewerton is a civil servant and a regular commuter on South West trains. His delay, 1 day and 10 hours per year.
It probably sounds an underestimate to me. Based on my journey time in from Fleet to Waterloo, we're at least 15 minutes a day late coming in, sometimes half an hour. Late going home as well. So I would say it could easily be double that figure.
Other companies clocked up similar delays. Using the same calculation, the regular commuter on Arriva Northern would total 17 hours over the year. And for South Central trains, the figure is 22 hours. Figures out today also showed that cancellations rose by 45% on the previous year. And with more strikes planned for the end of this month, transport and the railways in particular have jumped to the top of the government's agenda. Andy Bell, 5 News.
More stories on the move, and nearly 2,000 UK troops are set to be deployed to Afghanistan as part of a peacekeeping force. The Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon told the Commons that 17 nations alongside Britain will carry out joint patrols with Afghan police and help the interim government rebuild the region. It's expected the number of troops deployed to the country in the next few months will fall. Luciano Pavarotti is set to go ahead with a performance of Tosca at London's Royal Opera House tomorrow night, despite hearing that his mother died in Italy this morning. The star tenor was in rehearsals when he heard the news. He's returned to Italy to be with his family, but insisted that he will be ready to perform tomorrow evening. New research has found the most dangerous place for passive smoking can be the home. 90% of us are exposed to the potentially lethal chemicals in tobacco smoke in places like pubs. But scientists have found that living with a regular smoker is by far the most dangerous form of exposure to passive smoking. A new centre of excellence is to be set up to fight the growing threat of exotic and highly contagious diseases in Britain. With more of us travelling to far-flung countries for our holidays, we're bringing back more and more bugs that would hardly have been heard of here just a few decades ago. Charlie Hume has the details.
These people are preparing for their trips abroad by getting the right inoculations. 59 million foreign trips are made from Britain every year, but our love of travelling is contributing to the growing threat that we face from tropical diseases. Other reasons are the build-up of drug-resistant organisms, rising immigration and a warmer climate.
We are a global village now. Some 2 million people cross international boundaries every day of the year, and that means that the bugs are travelling with them, and those bugs don't carry passports, they don't respect any international boundaries, and they can be transmitted.
A report by the government picks out dozens of dangerous infections such as dengue fever spread through mosquito bites. Symptoms include painful joints and muscles and a rash. It can be fatal. Bilharzia, caused by this fluke or parasite which penetrates the skin from infected water. It causes anemia, dysentery and liver cirrhosis. Or sleeping sickness, typically from Africa, spread by the bite of a tsetse fly. It causes severe tiredness, even coma and death. And it's here at hospital laboratories like this that the true price of our wanderlust becomes clear. People come straight off the plane feeling unwell to hospitals, where it's up to the men and women here to test their blood samples to see whether they've contracted a tropical disease. Now, they tell me that they're getting more and more cases of the more serious forms of malaria and even rarer diseases like leishmaniasis being tested positive in this laboratory. It seems that whatever the fashion trend, be it overlanding in Africa or diving in Malawi, every single package holiday has its price. These worms were actually taken from the intestines of patients who'd unknowingly been contaminated by its eggs when abroad. If you're planning an exotic holiday, you should talk to your GP long before you go to make sure you have the right inoculations. When travelling to areas with malaria, don't forget to take your anti-malaria tablets. Wear mosquito repellent and cover up with long clothes. Clean wounds thoroughly with antiseptic. In warmer climes, minor cuts can become more serious infections. And use bottled water to drink and clean your teeth. However enticing, don't be tempted to paddle in fresh water, as this is another source of disease. The government has announced that it's setting up a panel of experts to monitor and advise on the spread of disease in Britain. But those with the wanderlust need to do their bit to prevent disease. Charlotte Hume, 5 News.
We'll take a break in just a moment, but stay with us because still ahead this Thursday evening, Diana's butler in the dock, he says, "I didn't steal her things." And the Rocky Horror Show, more nightmares in the sand traps at the Paris-Dakar Rally. Stay with us.